welcome to third grade lit meeting. My name is Jessica Gronke. I'm the team leader here. So I just thought we would start by doing a quick look around the table of our names and what our positions are here at Killdeer.
Ryan Callahan, third grade teacher.
Melanie Onstead, third grade.
Kelly Crisparo, special education.
Leanne April, third grade.
And Lisa Sherrill, third grade.
So the way that we'll operate today is I've projected our agenda up here so you can see live what we're working through as we go through our lit meeting. But please stop us at any time if you have a question or would like to see something or zoom in a little bit more. Feel free to jump in anytime you'd like.
All right, ready?
Here we go. We're ready.
There's only one letter that doesn't appear in any state name. What letter is it? Not what state is it? What letter is it? It is not U.
Z?
No.
Go.
B.
No.
Not a B?
Okay. It's near the end of the alphabet.
I got X.
No, it's not X.
No problem.
I'm guessing.
It starts the sound that a duck makes.
Oh, cute.
Yeah. No, every other letter, every state has it. Or not every state, but a state has it. Not cute.
Oh, you like
Right. So like a little background on that. Right. When we have our, we realized a couple years ago that we would come into these meetings and we'd be all over the place, right? And so one of the things that we know about facilitating meetings and productive meetings is how do you transition your brains from that crazy chaos of dropping the kids and the parent emails and all that stuff to, so in math and literacy it's just a fun, quick little, looks different all the time, sometimes it's just celebrations or something like that. So that little background on why that is.
Fun way to transition over to meeting.
More fun when we get the riddle.
I know, I'm sorry, there was no riddle this time.
Got it.
And just a little bit of a background knowledge of our agenda and the way that we set it up. Every team leader does it just a little bit different. But if you take a look up here at the top, we've included our norms up at the top so that we can be reminded every meeting, every day, just what our norms are as a team and at every meeting. And then you'll see along the side, we have roles assigned to each of us. So we have a norm knocker, that's our Ryan this month. So if at any time we aren't obeying by the norms, he would knock in. In addition to that, we've included what we say and what we won't say. Just to keep it in the forefront of our brains as we go along with every meeting, just to make sure that we're all on the same page and doing what's best for kids. In addition to the norm knocker role, you'll see that I've listed all of the trimester targets here for both lit, math, and math. Just again, to make sure that we're always circling back to the targets and making sure that we're including all of them as the trimester goes along. And then at the bottom, you'll see our roles. So Leanne, are you okay with reading attendance today?
Yep.
And Lisa will be taking notes.
With Jan.
Yeah, and Mel is our timekeeper today. So Mel's job is just to make sure that we're on track and gives us a friendly reminder at the end of the meeting to make sure that we can wrap up in time to get our kids from specials. All right, so let's just dive in. So last week, to give you all a background, we were talking about a CFA that we've given the students before break, and the target was about recount. So we wanted to come back to the table today to just touch base about what we've done in the last week since we've reviewed that CFA data about recount. So we're going to do a cadence structure called talking chips. And I love this one because in the classroom it just makes sure that everybody is accountable and everybody has contributed to the group. And it works really well for meetings too. So I'll give everybody a chip. And then with talking chips, we can go in random order, which is nice. So it spices it up a little bit compared to a typical round robin. So if anybody would like to start, what were some strategies that you used this week for recount?
I'll start.
Okay.
As a class, we created a central message bank of different central messages that could work for multiple different stories. But then also working on how to connect that central message to that specific story. So not just perseverance, but how does that work with that story? So we kind of, and we'll refer back to it and keep adding to it. So they can, if they're having a hard time with, central message, they can refer back to that bank that we'll have up on the wall.
Love that. Can you use them for clarifying questions too, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Did you read new stories, or were these stories that you had already read and thought about?
We created the bank based off of ones that the students have already used and then we connected them with stories we already read. So we're gonna work this week connecting those to new stories.
Great.
But when we created the bank, we talked about ones we already read.
I totally have a question, because I love this idea. Are you thinking that, like, when you go back to it then, right, because perseverance is the topic, so when you come to another book that the topic of the central message is perseverance, but this time it's, right, when you're struggling on something, you have to work, whatever it might be, are you thinking that you're gonna add all those different examples into the bank?
We wrote that at the bottom, talking about the
Okay.
central message of this story was to never give up when. I kind of went off of what you said from a couple meetings ago, saying it can't just be never give up. It has to be
Right.
specific towards a
But
specific
you're
story.
going back and
We're
you're
talking
adding,
about
that's
that.
awesome, so
Yeah.
you can see all those
Yeah.
different examples in there.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
One thing I just wrapped up at the end of last week, I think a lot of us were working on this, was that student-friendly rubric for the recount. So they had done a recount, and after getting some teacher feedback, then looking at some other student work, so we combined recounts from our class and from other classes. So I let them sort of wear the teacher hat, and using that rubric, they graded different students' work and learned a lot, you know, in that role, seeing like what the student was missing, what they should have added, having great conversations and realizing how quickly one missing piece took them from a 3.0 meets, you know, down to a developing. And so, great conversation, and I think we're gonna be using those rubrics this week as they work on their own, so we can have a side-by-side as a guiding piece in their writing.
So I also did that too. I did with some small groups working on just the rubrics and having the discussion, talking through, remind us what's a recount, look at the rubric, and then we did the different, you know, you're the teacher right now, what would you give us? And we had some great conversations. The kids that weren't able to put a recount together before, they were able to talk about what was good and what could have been added to it to make it a better recount according to the rubric. I also too, I have some kids that are having a hard time between the big picture and the central message. So we added a couple words in our thinking map. So the name it, verb it, big picture we do for the topic sentence, we put about under the big picture, and then in the central message, something like, it was a little different, like it's important to, or important to remember, so that they knew that it was important to the story lesson learned, not just what the story was about for the central message. So that, those two little sentence starters help them to differentiate the two, big picture and central message.
I really like that idea, Lisa. In my setting, my student has really great listening comprehension, but when it comes to breaking down and really pinpointing the big ideas, we're still really kind of pulling out those details of it. So we really focused a lot on what is a big idea and how can we support that big idea with those details. So that kind of stretches across a lot of our writing as well, but especially with recounting, making sure we find that what matches to the big picture and the central message instead of just those details that come up in the story.
I ended up giving back the CFA to the kids along with the rubric that I used for them. On there I gave them, you know, a glow, something you did super awesome on, and one thing for you to kind of focus on the next time. So then I gave them a different article, just a shorter text, had them recount that, but with that one piece or one skill to focus on while they're doing the recount. So maybe it was central message, maybe it was name it, verb it, big picture, or just the 5 events.
And I created a sample list of an example of a 3.0, a 2.5, a 2.0, a 1.5, and a 1.0. They projected them on the board, and then I had them open up their own recounts. And they had to compare their recount with what was on the board, and then they wrote a reflection in Schoology about what grade they think they deserved based on the samples that I projected on the board. Just a chance for them to have some self-reflection about that. So lots of great things doing with recount. Does anybody have anything else to add?
Did you guys kind of, because I know we were talking, like at the last meeting, we were talking about all of this, part of this wasn't kind of created yet. Do you guys have these, like your sample kind of thing? Is that somewhere that we can kind of hang on to it to store as right? So later or next time or next year or something that we can kind of go back to it.
Like a recount file on the drive
Yeah.
of resources.
We can,
That's
like,
a
we
great
could
idea.
add that into there, so that we've got that this year and next year.
Yeah, I love that.
That'd be awesome.
And that's a good segue into what's coming up next. We had talked about last week with these recount strategies of wanting to check in within the next week to do one additional recount. Since the only official recount that we've done is that CFA. So we wanted one more piece of data to go along with this. So when we left last week, we had said that we'd each bring a text that we thought might be a good piece of literature to have as a recount. So I just thought we'd do a quick round robin. If you brought one, great to share. I chose Mr. Post Project because what I loved about this is that there's 6 chapters, so it would be easy to break up. Each chapter could be its own big idea as they go along. And the central message is pretty obvious on this one, which could be helpful for them. So, Lisa, did you have anything to share?
Yeah, I got a couple online, just actually super teacher. One is called The Perfect Camping Trip, where a couple different things that go against their camping trip, all these things that, what's that?
Problems?
Problems, thank you. I don't know why thank you for that simple word. All these problems keep happening, but then at the end, they like make do and they solve the problem. And then friends helping friends, which they can all relate to. So they're just, the central message is pretty obvious, but I don't know, it's not like they're kind of shorter ones, so I wasn't sure if that was gonna be enough.
I like that there's a hard copy though that they can highlight and annotate though
Yeah.
as we go along. So that's a fun
Yeah,
piece.
and somebody mentioned too, actually putting, I think Amy, you did last time, putting the number next to the event, so like
That's what I was gonna, yeah.
number them so they can see, ooh, do I have 5? Or even like Leanne, you said before, if they're all up here, wait, maybe I need to think and read more because they can't all be in the beginning. So if they stretch out their 5 main ideas, so yeah, or we can,
Right.
yeah, I liked them to have a copy in front of them too. I don't know if these are the most perfect ones, but something to start
Nice for them to have something tangible to hold on
in
to.
front of them.
Well, actually, I was taking a lead from Lisa. She said a couple weeks ago, I think it was, she had used some picture books, and I like that idea. Having them just, I left them up in the room, but it was Back Case Stripes and Kevin Hangus, yeah, Lily's Purple Classic. So again, clear central messages in there. And since there's dialogue throughout those, they'd have to put that in their own words. They'd have to kind of sum up instead of just taking it directly from the text, which is an issue I had with some of my students when they were recounting. So apologize that I left them up there, but that's one way we could look at it. The problem is then either making copies, because I do like them going back into it. So somehow making copies or having enough copies from the working groups
It could be
together.
good for their listening comprehension as well though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right now?
I can go.
Oh, okay, good.
I was looking at Goldbook a little bit too, just trying to think of other resources that I don't feel like I've tapped into much lately. But Goldbook has a ton, and there's a lot of different ways to assess different parts of it. So there's multiple choice or the multi-part, and if you remember, like I know coaches have access to this, but those kind of bar graphs is just depth of knowledge. So it's like for blooms, they're just identifying, and then they're building on that. So that's another way. This one, this story that I just clicked on. Little polar bear and the husky pup. So there's not a lot of, there's one little visual to that one, but again, some dialogue, things that they may have to reword. Maybe a little lengthier than some of the others. I don't know if those are like 1 page, 2 page, but not bad.
I like how that has the line numbers along the side.
Yes.
So they could directly
Right.
quote.
Get a little
On
bit
line
more.
5,
Mhm.
it says,
Right.
forget that they needed to use text up there.
Right, at least it's friendly as, it's a little more broken down, so, another option.
I pulled this from, I think it was 2 years ago we used this, Goldilocks and the 3 Other Bears. It's like a practice for this EOU. So it just came from Reading A to Z. It's a story they're kind of familiar with. It kind of flaps them a little bit. Leandra was just saying that I totally forgot. Some of the kids got confused because the bear family are actually the people, not
Right.
the bears. But it is a level P. It's longer, it's got some nice pictures in there too, but
What are the other questions on that one, Val? Because I know last week we also talked about taking this opportunity to check in on some other targets as well.
what trait would you use to describe Goldilocks in the beginning of the story? How does she change throughout? What's different about this version of Goldilocks from the original? Why does the author choose to write the story from a narrator's point of view? And how would you feel if you were the 3 bears at the end of the story? There were some illustration questions and then 2 vocabulary, scowl and brimming. So you can also use those, even for something, a different target.
Yeah.
I was thinking about getting organized. I like sleuth articles or passages because they're short. Something like getting organized, girl forgot her homework. It's easily relatable, and I think the central message is pretty clear. So something that has dialogue, I didn't think about that, so that's good because I had that same challenge where they're really rewriting events, and dialogue definitely makes them paraphrase. So something that's easily relatable, clear central message, and something that they would need to put into their own words.
Anybody else?
I brought one, but you guys have plenty, so we will hang on to those as like a reteach or small group or instructor or something.
Yep, that's great. Sure. All right, so now we just need to pick one of those and have them recount. I think we said before Friday, which would be the 25th of January. Anybody have a favorite? Jumping out of it. I mean, they're all wonderful pieces. And the ones that we don't use, we could certainly use as practice in small groups, right? So I think all of these could be valuable.
I kind of like, I love your idea of using picture books, but I feel like for like a grade in the grade booky kind of let's check in and everything, zooming for something that we know for sure is end of grade level text complexity would be good. But then building in picture books is more of an application kind of thing to even to keep reteaching, or like you said, partner them up and okay, you guys are gonna recount this one and offer it up for, like, I think I love that as more of a application or extension kind of thing, whereas one of these we know is end of grade level. It would show mastery, yeah.
Well, and I like that there were other pieces of data that we could collect as well on that end. But tell me again, Leanne, what you said about them flip-flopping and being confused. That's the only thing I worry about.
The bear is the one going into the people house, but they're called the bears.
Right.
So the last name is the bears.
The last name is the bears.
So
There's a picture
or a
in there.
picture, I mean, that's
but-
exactly it. So
Yeah.
we've been talking about
That's
using
so
illustrations.
really-
So
Yeah.
They need to look at the pictures, and those who aren't using the pictures and reading closely enough miss that,
Right.
which is telling. But it's worked, and we've done it
Yeah.
before, and it's
Yeah.
under, it's grade level.
Well, and your idea too, because like when we think about other targets that we report on, your new one this trimester is that Lit 5-6. So referring to parts of stories when they talk about how they build, but also distinguishing their own point of view from that of the narrator or those other characters. And that we have to check in on our own, and there's a lot of anecdotal. So that would be a really good one to tweak some of those questions and get some of that to see how they're doing with that, to pull it from it.
Is everybody okay with that then?
Yeah, sounds
All
great.
right. All right, so what questions do we need to tweak then? Let's go back and take a look.
Is it
If
on
we were to
the-
give this by Friday,
Because recount's so heavy,
I
maybe just,
don't remember.
not all, I mean, could we just focus
If
on a
not,
few
I
of the
could-
questions maybe? Because recount takes them a while.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. We could always save those questions for another
Another
time
time.
maybe,
Yeah.
but.
Or if you,
I can retype up the document too. I did not type this up, so I don't have it in electronic copies.
Isn't it in the suite? I remember that from, it's somewhere.
It probably is, I'm not popping it up quickly, but if we wanted to kind of think about what questions that we would want to add, we can pull it up too.
so what if we did it this way? What if we talk about, that is a lot to check in on. So what if we pick 2 or 3 targets that we can take a look again at that T2 target list that Janet created for us in the beginning of trimester 2, and let's see what's a little weak. And then we can zoom in specifically on whichever one is missing or rewrite if necessary. So it looks like we're doing really well with Lit 3.2 so far. And what was the other target? No. Does it have the numbers on there?
Yeah.
3-6.
Okay, thank you. 3.6.
point of view.
And there's nothing right now in this document. So that might be one that we want to focus our energy on with recount. What was the Lit 3-6 question?
Why does the author choose to write the story from a narrator's point of view? And then how would the extension question is how would you feel if you were the three bears at the end of the story and why?
I feel like that
So-
first one is almost.
Yeah, so I think that's, since that's old, I think you have to,
Update
it's
it?
almost like that extension one is, because the target itself is distinguish their own point of view
Yeah.
from that of the narrator, or those are the characters. So your first question has to be something like, how does the narrator feel about the events? How do the other bears feel? And then you would agree or disagree and why,
Okay.
kind of, yeah.
I thought I found the original, but it's not. I'll keep looking.
On the cover sheet.
Okay. Do you wanna just make it for now, do you wanna just make edits on the hard copy now?
Yeah.
And then we can always retype, reprint if needed. Alright, and then do we wanna eliminate the other pieces? The other questions?
I don't think so, unless you need it for something else.
I kinda like that vocabulary one though, cause I have it. Right. That quick. Yeah, it's a quick and easy target that we can just
Yeah.
gather some more data on.
Okay.
The other piece that you don't have in here is your described characters. We haven't checked in on that one in a while, and this could be, right, if you're going from point of view, if you start with the described characters, and it was a point of view, like that kind of all goes.
And they should be able to do that based on the story, right? Does it give a good example of character traits in that?
From the story, not that I can recall right now.
But is it similar, I haven't read the story, but is it similar to Goldilocks where
Yes.
there's somebody
Yeah, it's just
sneaky and
flat.
like broken, so they could infer the curious, right? They could infer some traits based on what they've done.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
flat.
Okay.
Does, in this version of it, does she learn, like, does she really learn a lesson, or is it, she just runs away?
This was tricky, remember, I think.
Yeah, because we didn't focus on this, I mean, on that one,
The last paragraph is Goldilocks never again went to the home of the three bears, but she did often daydream about the delicious bowl of porridge and the perfect little rocking chair and the comfy cozy bed. They were really just right.
I don't learn all that.
She learned not to go to the house.
Right, not to break in.
respect other people's things.
Right, it's important to remember to always be respectful of others' property. I know it's a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
They're gonna say exactly what.
Don't break into something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're gonna say. That's what they're saying. Are we okay with that? So proceeding forward, even though it's a tricky central message? See what they can give us? Right, it's a data point, right? This isn't a right.
Sometimes they'll come up with something that
Right, that we
never
didn't
thought
think
of, yeah.
Could we, right, so we wanna see what they can do independently and on their own, but could we challenge them to, like, could we guide them a little bit to avoid that?
Like, can we
Like,
say,
if we know,
can we
if
say
we
the central
know,
message is not?
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
give them a non-example,
Again.
just like it is not.
because remember, it's a life lesson,
Yes.
right? Something that you're gonna learn and take in your heart, and we all know, don't break into other people's houses, right? Like, we should all know that, so the author's not writing it to help us understand that. What is he,
Yeah,
I think
front load that a little bit and see
Yeah.
what we do?
I like that.
Yeah.
Could we also do, I mean, when you were in my room a couple weeks ago, give them 3 words, think about these 3 words. Your central message should connect to this. Because I don't know, I could see me putting up there, don't say this, and the kids are like, then I have no idea.
Give them like a
Stuck.
word bank.
Yeah, maybe just like, think of these 3 words if you get stuck, or, you know, if you need.
Okay. Do you think we could give this all in one lit plaque with a recount?
The reading time at the end of the day?
Shared
Like-
reading, shared.
That might be a little
That might
tight
be
for 30
tight.
minutes.
Yeah.
What if we gave it during small group time, during meal time as an activity, and then that way they could potentially have up to an hour. And then if they don't finish it, they could even finish it the next day.
Yeah.
We can be flexible with that. So maybe we could even start Thursday if we wanted to. Start the 24th, and then whatever they don't finish, Friday could be their catch-up time.
Yeah, that's good.
So I'm gonna add on to this T2 targets tab that I'm just gonna put Goldilocks.
Yep.
For lit 3, lit 6, And like vocab's way down at the bottom, I can stick it there too.
Okay.
And that was it, right?
Yeah. 3. Well, and
Are we
recount.
doing the motivation or are we not doing
Our character.
that? Oh, we put that in there, never mind. Yep, got it.
I know it's not on our agenda for today, but just kind of looking at this, since Lit 6 kind of popped into our heads, we probably at some point want to talk about that Lit 5. Because that's another one that is really just more as a team. There's not a district assessment for that one, it's just a team. And so how, like what do our whole group lessons look like, small group, what maybe even kind of like what we did before, where we create those guiding questions that we can use at our small group table. Because it's a really hard one for just paper pencil, right? Like I feel like that's one that we're gonna get a lot out of the conversations that we're having with kids, which is one of the reasons why there isn't the district CFA. So maybe that could be something for next week that we talk about, or you guys work together all the time, like just create those guiding questions to help us get some good data on that.
That would be great. Can I add to what you're saying too? Just, in looking for some of these things, I found this great website. It's called Elementary Nest, and it has all these mentor texts that go along with every target in Lit. So, it's some second grade and some third grade, some first grade. So like ask and answer questions, so picture books that go with it. There's, recounting, there's story elements, there's even the point of view, and then there's also one about how the pictures help, how illustration adds to the text. So there's like 6 different picture books that we could use as mentor text. So I can email everyone the site, and then maybe we can kind of refer back to that. You could do whole group, small group, and some of those picture books were in there too for recount, so. Yeah, so I'll share with everyone.
Wonderful.
For the guiding questions that we were talking about for 3-5, you guys also have that, that spiraled, that bound, like, bookmark kind of page. You created it for everybody.
Right.
I have an extra, Ryan, if you want, that I can share. So it goes through like prompts, different prompts for specific targets, just something maybe to check in vocabulary that you may need to talk about before they get there. Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about, because right now, I just was interpreting that as like, vocabulary, just tell, what's a stanza, what is, just, I was introducing just some of those terms, and that's as far as I've gotten, and just dabbled a little bit.
For a lot of them though, that's so important.
Oh, right,
involving,
yeah. Yeah, just to get them over that word, they look at it and like, I don't know what they're asking. Just
Right,
make them
right.
know that's what it is.
Well, so, and to kind of like build a little background on it too, like in second grade, it's a lot of understand that like a piece of literature has a structure of beginning, middle, and end, and how the beginning introduces a story and the ending concludes it, right? So what did the author do at the beginning of this story to introduce the character, something like that? In 4th grade, where it goes, is that they have, they use that language, so they understand the difference, the types of vocabulary like you're talking about that they're gonna see in poetry versus in a piece of literature versus a drama, right? So that in 4th grade, it really does kind of become, well, I know that this is a drama because there's, they're like scene directions and all this kind of stuff, whereas in this poem, it's the stand of versus where here I'm gonna see like this kind of thing. So you're almost like kind of bridging that gap from 2nd grade, which is, do you get that this has beginning, middle, and end and all these pieces, to tell me the difference between all these types of literature. You're kind of right in the middle there, which is hard.
All right, so just to review, we've agreed to give Goldilocks and the Three Bears starting Thursday, wrapping up Friday. We just need volunteers, 1 person to change the questions.
I have started.
You already started?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Mel. And then if someone could copy for the team.
I can do those.
You gonna fight for it?
I'll let you
Either
do
one.
it. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're so
I know.
You guys will be in there at the same time.
What was that?
You'll be in there at the same time.
Right.
We'll end up doing it
Thank you so
together.
much, Helen. Appreciate it.
I'm gonna keep the.
All right, good. I think I'm excited about that. That's a good check-in for our kids. All right, so moving on, unless anybody has any other questions about recount and the check-in we're gonna give by Friday. Everybody feeling good about that? Okay. So moving in, Janet, we talked about, just a quick reminder about the need to check in on Lit 1 and 3.
right, which we kind of talked a
We
little
kinda
bit
did, yeah,
about,
we
that
kinda
was
did.
built in a little
We're
bit
still
there
efficient.
too. So one of the things that Jessica and I were noticing, if you pull up the pacing guide for third grade, for this trimester, this whole module that we're working on for the second half is all info text. We're not, or no, it's info writing, it's lit and info books, my apologies, but there's very, very little lit. It's really only lessons 13 and 14. And so just kind of making sure that we're staying on top of hitting the right data collection, hitting those targets, coming back to it. We thought maybe taking a look at lesson 13 and 14 and just seeing what that entails and making sure we're using it to the best of our ability. Might make sense for today.
Yeah.
Great, I'm gonna open that.
Yeah, lesson 13 and 14 of our slides then.
Yeah. And I know we can pull it up online, so I don't think we front load it to let people.
105.
Yes, slide, or the lessons for slide 13 and 14. Do you want to put it up on Pearson and maybe project it for them to see? Okay, I'll hop off here for that.
Am I the one? Oh,
Yeah, it's right.
Sooner than I thought. So Janet's pulling up a direct link to our Pearson so that you can see the lessons that we're looking at for our Ready Gen lesson. Take a look.
Give me a second, I'll switch my browser here.
And I'll pull it up on our slides too. Just so you go match there. What slide are you on?
105.
All right, Song of Sky and View. I like this one.
Yeah, I was just saying, I had to find it a couple weeks ago, I emailed it to myself at school, but there's an article about the thing they climb to. What is that called? But the finger, with the hand.
Like a mountain, but not.
Yeah, so there was like a little article, and I was like, that's in our story, yeah.
That'd be fun for like a daily practice.
Yeah, so I have to find it this 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so here we had just had them create a central message tree map to check in on that specific target about what to do to support it. Unit 2, module B.
So lesson 13, the objective is the central message. Lesson 14, it's ask and answer questions and illustrations.
So this might be a great, quick and easy check-in if they were to create,